So I think we can start now. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth and last webinar of this course, Promoting Ocean Literacy and Project-Based Learning by Monitoring Biodiversity. I am Tekla. You may know me from the last webinar, and I currently work at Submon, based in Barcelona, that is one of the partners of Virtues project. Before starting with the presentation about the hands-on activities, I would like to remind you a few things. You may have noticed that your microphone are by default on mute and you're not able to start your camera. So please, if you have any question regarding the content of this webinar, you can post them in the discussion forum of Module 4 on Canvas platform. We will be answering all your questions as soon as possible. And as you know, in this forum, you can talk to us, so you can talk directly to the Virtues team, but also with the other participants. Also, today, I'm gonna show you some short videos of students doing some of the activities within Virtues project. I hope they don't appear blurry or buffering. I apologize in advance if it occurs, but it can be because of my internet connection. Actually, here in Barcelona it's raining a lot, so I hope the internet connection doesn't go away. In any case, this webinar will be recorded, so you will be able to rewatch it. Okay, I think we can start. I said everything so far, and let me just put the presentation on the full screen option, and we can start with the presentation. Okay. Perfect. Now you will able to see my screen. So everybody agrees that hands-on activities are a useful teaching tool. Students are engaged in multiple modes of learning, and learning by doing is a knowledge to be very important for students because it raises students' interest in the subject. But when it comes to hands-on activities related to the ocean, it may seem difficult to bring the ocean and its concept to the classroom. Virtues can help you, providing a simple methodology that can be easily used by the students. Here are some general best practices to create a lesson plan for hands-on activities. So first of all, you shall choose a topic and explain to the learners why you are choosing this specific topic and why it is important for them to grasp the concepts. It is also important to know as much as possible, so as much information as possible regarding your audience. So you shall know the target group. Before proposing an activity, you should know, for instance, the age of the public or the educational background. This may seem obvious for the school teachers because they know very well their students, but also in informal education environments, it is essential to know the public to which you are delivering the activity. In fact, you should adapt the vocabulary and also adapt the learning tools and the level of complexity of the contents according to your public. Also, you shall establish clear goals beforehand. So before starting with the activity, you should state clear aims for the activity and think about the learning expectations. And last, you shall use best teaching practices. So you should think how you are going to teach the concepts and, for instance, where you are going to do the activity and what are the materials that you need. One big issue about this is also to think about how much time you have at your disposal to better prepare your lessons plans. And of course, use best practices to engage the public. So With Virtuous, we give a complete support to educators and teachers that want to implement this project-based learning tool in their school or educational centers. Virtuous educational tool is versatile and supports the connection between fieldwork and classroom pedagogy. Also, Virtuous promotes teacher collaboration as it connects different subjects such as, for instance, biology, mathematics, chemistry, or arts. And also, Virtuous methodology is quite simple. By now, you should know that it is based on the use of plastic discs mounted on a plastic pipe rack and placed in aquatic ecosystems for various lengths of time. We want to stress the fact that Virtuous can be easily adapted to fit with different age and skill levels. So today, we are going to explore the activities that can be undertaken within Virtuous, and I'm going to show you the educational resources you have at your disposal in the form of tutorials or data sharing platform or guides for identification of species. And all those resources that I'm presenting can be found ready to use on Virtuous website, which is this one. Also, on Canvas platform, you can download the lesson plans of the activities, and you can use them as a guide to help you set the experiments and the investigation activities with Virtuous. In Module 1, you learned how to mount a Virtu rack, and we gave you a few indications on how to select convenient area to deploy the disks, taking into account several factors. So, for instance, we talk about the fact that the accessibility of the area must be taken in consideration, and also the environmental conditions found in the study area or the tide levels in order to secure that water covers the disk during all the time of the deployment. But after a certain time in the water that need to be carefully scheduled depending on the geographical area you are and the aim of the activity, you can retrieve the disk and let the fun begin. So when you are retrieving the disk, there are several ways to bring the disk from the deployment area to your laboratory. For instance, you can use some buckets to store the disk, but also you can use plastic breathing bags. I think you can find them in aquarium stores, or decide to wrap the disk in wet newspaper to preserve the moisture. Keep in mind that you can reduce the risk of squeezing the living organisms using some place spacers. And if you're not doing the analysis of the disk right after, so immediately after retrieving the disk, you should remember to bring a water tank the day that you are retrieving the disk, such as this one, to collect some water from the deployment site that can come in handy later. So the logistic of the deploying and the retrieving and the transportation to your school or educational center need to be carefully planned. Also because you will not want to jeopardize the success of the educational project. On Virtu's website, you can find a few hacks that can help you during this operation. Once you have carried the disk to your school or educational center, we recommend to keep the disk away from light and in a cool place. In case, as I was saying before, you're not doing the investigation straight away, it is recommendable to change the water in the boxes or the buckets you are storing the disk and provide aeration. This will increase the organism's survival time. And here you can see an example of how a school here in Barcelona decided to store the disk. So they divided the disk of different level of the Virtu rack in buckets, and they provided also aeration. As you can see here, and they provided aeration with oxygen pump. Then when it comes the time to get ready for the observation and analysis, you should think about what materials you will need. Basically, you will need of course, the discs and a stereoscope. You can also think of using mobile phones or cameras and to take picture, and also some maybe a laptop or a computer to compute the analysis, and also some basic laboratory tools such as metallic tweezers or trays or petri dishes that can come in handy. So before starting, you should consult the availability of the laboratory materials. But as I was saying before, you don't need much material, so you just need some basic tools. And let's start with the activities. So the first activity is the first step of student engagement, and it can be undertaken also by the little ones. So youngsters, when observing the discs with their naked eyes or with the help of a stereoscopes, are curious to know what are the organisms that they are watching. So in this short video, you can see a student from Hakro School in Sweden placing the disc in a tray with water, preparing them for the observation. You can start the observation with a naked eye, so directly watching and observing the discs. And you can go on with a stereoscope, and usually a magnification of 20-40 times is enough to observe the discs. And teachers and educators can guide the observation with some question. For instance, what are the organisms that colonize the disc? Are they animals or plants? Or for instance, how do the organisms differ in size? Or what shape and colors are you observing? Or how do the organisms are anchoring themselves to the discs? Also, you can ask to describe what they are seeing. And here it is an example of a video taken directly from students with a mobile phone of an organism, in that case a barnacle, while they were observing the discs under the lenses of their stereoscope. And you can see here the barnacle moving his appendices. And as I was saying, this video was taken directly from, with a mobile phone from the students. And also, here it is another example of a video taken again while observing through lenses. And you can maybe ask your students to draw what they are seeing. So let's look again at this video.
Mira, mira. Wow. Y aquí hay otras cosas. Hostia, mira, ahí hay otro.
Hay un huevo de gambas, ¿eh? Un montón.
Okay, even if it was in Spanish, I wanted to share with you this video without cutting the audio to give an idea of the reactions of students when they are observing. Sometimes it is even difficult to take them away from the stereoscope because they are marveled to see such an amazing life under the lenses. So this first approach on the disc enhances the observational skills of the students. And a step further in the observation activity is the identification of species. In fact, students are always curious to give a name to the tiny organisms they have seen, such as the organisms that seem like a tiny tree, or the other one that they have waited to appear under the lenses without blinking their eyes for 10 minutes or more, and then just in a second it hid again. So the students are curious about identifying the species and get to know the organisms they are observing. And identification of species is known to be tricky sometimes, but with little helps, it becomes accessible to everybody. On Virtu's website, you can find extra help in the form of identification plates. So if you go in the section for the teacher, you will see on the menu on the left, species identification plates. And for instance, you can find plates by feeding strategies. where you can find information about different groups. So for instance, the primary producers like microalgae diatoms that are the first colonizers of the disk, and the microalgae, or also the grazers, that they are the primary consumers, and the most common found on the disk are the mollusks, or arthropoda, or annelida. And also we have an identification plates for filter feeders that can be sessile, so they can stay on the disk, stay attached on the disk, and filter the water to their bodies through special structures like cilia, or they can be also errant, so they can be moving filter feeders that actively swim or create currents with their appendages to move water into their mouth. And some example of that are, for instance, the bryozoan, the ascidian, or the arthropoda. And also, you will find an identification plates for predators. Many of the predators you will find on the disk are not sessile. In fact, they actively swim to the disk, or they are carried there by the currents. An example of predators are sea slugs, starfish, or hydroid. And you can download the plates, all those plates, and laminate them for your activity in the classroom. Another option is to identify the organisms by their taxonomic groups. So on Virtu's website, in the same section as before, you can find identification plates of the most commonly found organisms. So you can find, for instance, identification plates for mollusca, chordata, cnidaria, arthropods, annelida, and bryozoa. On these identification plates, we will find information about the common names or the diets or information on their recruitment. And again, you can print them and laminate them for your activity in the classroom. Also, another useful resource that you can find on Virtu's website are the identification plates with QR codes. Students, in fact, can scan the QR code with their mobile phone, and once you scan it with your mobile phone, the QR codes redirect you to the website, such as Encyclopedia Britannica or the Marine Life Information Network, where you can read extra information. So you can read information about the ecology and biology of the organisms that are commonly found on the disk. So students can enrich their knowledge about ecological and biological features. On Virtu's website, I would like to stress also the existence of this section, species, where you can find picture and descriptions of organisms that you can easily identify on the disks. These resources will make it easier to identify the plants and the animals that you are observing. And for saltwater species, there is an additional resource created by the University of Gothenburg. I'm talking about the Aquascope, which is a platform where you can find extra resources that may help you with species identification. And also you can find extra information about biology and ecology of many more marine animals and plants, as well as their habitats or marine ecosystems. And here are some of the best practices for identification of organisms. So first of all, you should use the right magnification. So you should use a magnifying glass or a stereoscope, and also it is important to have a good illumination. Often it may be beneficial to scrape off some of the fouling on the disk and place it in a petri dish and study them under a microscope in a greater magnification. Another important thing that can help you in this activity is the student preparation. So before starting with the observation, you can give them an introductory lecture on what is biofouling and explain them the most common taxonomic groupings that can be found in your specific geographical area. So in this way, the students will know what to expect. So they will know what are they looking for. So with some basic previous knowledge, they will enjoy more the activity of identification. And also, you should use identification guides, such as the Virtuous teaching resources, but also on the internet, you can find a lot of identification guides for biofouling and also dichotomous keys that can be useful for identification of the species. And here are some examples of pictures taken by the students or teachers of the organisms found attached on the disc. For instance, here we have, oops, my pointers just go missing. Okay, here, a skeleton shrimps. Here we have an amphipod, an Ascidian tunicate. Here we have a balanus, and here we have an anemona. And all, for instance, this picture was taken through the stereoscope. So students can have fun also photographing the organisms that they are observing. And we encourage all of you to report your finding and share your observation on Virtuous website. So we have now members in 26 countries all around the world, and your school or educational center, if you decide to take part of this project, can also take contacts with other members to exchange picture, observation, to discover the amazing marine biodiversity find that can be found in a different geographical area. So we encourage you to create a report of observation. After logging in Virtuous website, you can create a report and you can add here your observation. So you can add a report for a group of species or a single species, and you can also think about the degree of confidence. So if you are totally confident or quite confident or unsure, and you can add also information about the quantity of the individuals of such species, or information about the coverage of the disc. And also here there is a section where you can attach some pictures of your observation. This report can be done directly by the students or by the teachers or educators. And while you are doing the activity, you can fill a Virtuous recording sheet that you can find on Canvas platform and also on Virtuous website. And then you can transfer the observation to Virtuous database. In this way, we promote the sharing of experience among the members of Virtuous. The next activity I would like to present is about the investigation of the ecological succession, which is the process of change in the community species composition and structure over time. In order to undertake an investigation on succession, you shall deploy the discs and monitor the colonization through time. So you need to decide for how long you would like to do the experiment and design the experiment accordingly to it. Here are some examples of questions that can guide your investigation through time. So for instance, you can think of and you can observe what are the species that arrive first, what are the pioneers. So what are the species that arrive first, and if those species are also the ones that stay the longest. And also you can see if there are new species moving in while the times goes on. And here there is an example of a succession project done by Geomar in Kiel Harbor. And here you can see some picture of the upper side and the lower side of some discs deployed in the water. And you can see how the colonization changed through time. So we have the first wick in the water, the second, the third, going on until the 12th wick in the water. You can decide to monitor through time some variables, such as the growth of fouling organisms on the discs, or how the number of species or the number of individuals change during time. You can also compare the spring, summer, and autumn recruitment, And also you can think to compare and to do a comparison of Secession into different aquatic locations. On Virtue's website, you can find a lesson plan for the activity of Secession with an example of experiment timeline, because as I said before, the time here is the most important variable. So you should schedule your experiment, and you should plan your experiment according to the timeline you want to follow. Another activity that you can undertake with youngsters within Virtues is the estimation of biodiversity indices. So you can do a quantitative analysis. So for older students, a quantitative analysis of biodiversity can be performed by calculating some basic diversity indices commonly used in ecological surveys. And those indices will provide students with numbers that they can use to make objective comparisons of the tests. And Sally, during webinar 2, explained you what are the biodiversity indices and how to calculate them. So I'm not going to repeat them again, but I would like to summarize this activity and present you the teaching resources we prepared for you. So estimating biodiversity is all about counting, and here there is a video where we can see some students from Hocker School in Sweden that are performing a manual counting of barnacle on Virtues discs. And we think that the counting of organisms is very engaging for the students, and also it is a good exercise. So to perform counting of biodiversity indices, you have also another option. So not calculating the formula, but for instance, you can start from photographs and the image processing software ImageJ. So in this case, you should take high quality pictures of the discs, and then these pictures can be processed later by the software. And in this case, it is helpful to have color photographs because they better suit for this method of analysis. And analyzing the pictures with the ImageJ software, you can, for instance, perform a manual or automatic counting of the organisms growing on the disk, or measure the percentage of cover on the disk automatically, or perform a simultaneous analysis of multiple disks, and perform analysis of picture taken under a stereoscope. So you can discover the many tools that ImageJs have, and on Virtue's website you will find tutorials on how to perform calculation with this software, and also some extra instruction to download it and to use the tools. So to perform a visual estimation of the percentage of cover of the discs, you can also use the guide for visual estimation of percentage cover, which can be downloaded from Virtue's website. Here it is an example of students, again from Hocker School in Sweden, that are performing a visual estimation of percentage cover. As you can see from the video, they are trying to analyze a photo, a picture, but this activity can also be undertaken directly from, from the disk, so observing real discs. But in any case, taking a picture is always a good idea to perform visual estimation of the percentage cover, also because you can zoom in and zoom out the picture. And you can download Virtue's teaching package on, you can download Virtue's teaching package on estimating biodiversity on Virtue's disk. And as you know from Sally's webinar of the last week, the estimation of biodiversity indices is based on 3 parameter, basically the number of species identified, the number of individuals for each species, and the total number of organisms in the samples. Even though we encourage students to do some math and calculate by themselves the indices, and here in this material you have the formula to do the calculation, we also provide a biodiversity calculator that computes calculation of biodiversity indices. So in this case, the students just have to add the basic parameters and select which of the indices they want to calculate. But this biodiversity calculator can also be used to double check the results. We think that counting the individuals and estimating the biodiversity indices is a good exercise for students. In real situation, it happens that they come up with different counts. So this demonstrates that there are source of errors. So maybe some errors can be made when different persons are counting the discs. But this is also an opportunity to learn about the sources of error and how to deal with them in a statistical way also. Okay, we go on with another activity, which is the comparison of different sites. So to investigate two different sites, the virtual disk can be deployed into different locations. For instance, a protected bay and a port, or a more exposed area and the less exposed areas, or maybe two locations where waters have different salinity values. When deploying virtuous racks into different locations, many information can be gained. For instance, you can study the composition of the fouling community in the two areas, or the species diversity, the community structure, or the biomass of biofouling found on the disk. And also you can investigate the influence of environmental factors on the colonization. So to answer those questions, once the disks are retrieved, students can undertake activities of observation of the disk, identification of the species, calculation of biodiversity indices. So they will have some numbers to compare the disks and to compare information between the two different areas selected. And for this type of experiment, it is useful also to measure physical and chemical parameters of the seawater in order to characterize better the two environments where the disks are deployed. So students can undertake measurement of temperature, salinity, pH, turbidity, oxygen concentration, oxygen saturation, nutrient concentration, or chlorophyll concentration. Also, as we suggested before, within the Virtuous community, member can exchange picture of the disk, so students can investigate the biodiversity in different geographical area. You can download the teaching package comparison of different sites, again, in the same section of the website for the teacher. In the menu, you will find sample class project, and here you can download materials. Here you will find instruction on how to set this type of experiment to compare different sites, and also ideas on what to investigate. Another activity that can be done with virtuous disks are the experiment with antifouling compounds to test their antifouling properties. So what are the antifouling? You may know that those compounds are used by ship owners to slow the growth or facilitate the detachment of fouling organisms. In fact, biofouling of the ship hulls can cause many problems to the ship owners. For instance, it can create resistance to the water that lead to a decrease of the ship speed, creating this extra resistance. And also, this extra resistance causes the boat to burn extra fuel. Fueling can be also harmful for the environment because it can facilitate the introduction of alien species, which are the species introduced in a different geographic region where they are not supposed to be. So humans have produced many antifouling compounds. So students can decide to investigate their properties and their effectiveness on fouling organisms. So to assess the properties of antifouling paints or compounds, you can paint half of the discs, as is shown here in this picture. You can decide to paint both the upper side and the lower side of the discs. And you can use some tape to delimit the area that need to be painted. You shall dry the disc overnight before deploying in the water. Or also you can decide to deploy 2 racks at the same location, one entirely painted with antifouling paints and the other without this pretreatment. So this last, so the normal one will be used as a control disc to compare between the 2 racks, the growth or the biomass or the percentage cover of the species community. I planned to share with you a video made by some students of Okra School in Sweden, but actually I don't trust a lot my internet connection. So I encourage you to watch it directly on Canvas. Under Module 4, you will see the lessons plans for the activities that I'm talking about, and under the experiment of antifouling, you will see this video. And in this video, the students tell their experience while testing some of antifouling compounds and also explain how they settle this type of experiment. So let's go on with other activities. In the following slide, I will present 2 experiments that were done at Guiomar Helmholtz Center in Kiel, Germany, and they can give you inspiration for activities on biofouling in your classroom. So the first experiment is an activity with colored disc to examine the dependence of colored disc with the number of species and species composition of phytoplankton communities. So basically what they did is they painted the disc with different colors. So for instance, dark or bright colors, and they deployed the disc in the Kiel harbor. And after some time in the water, they analyzed whether the phytoplankton colonization was influenced by different color, or for instance, if the phytoplankton settled more or darker disc or on a brighter disc. And it could be interesting to change the target species to, for instance, mollusk or algae to investigate their preference for colors. So experiments with biofouling, as you can see, are very versatile and leave space for different kind of settling and different kind of investigation topics. The other experiment, again carried out at Guiomar Center in Kiel, was about different substrate and secession. So here in this picture, you can see the structure of a different rack, so not the normal virtuous rack. This rack was built with different items. So for instance, PVC, aluminum, acrylic, and plastic bottles. And in this experiment, the aim was to compare the biofouling on different substrate after 6 months and after 1 year in the water. And they leave the rack, the structure at 3 meter depth, so in well-lit waters. And in this way, it was simulated the biofouling of common marine litter found in the ocean. Marine litter is raising big concern, also because it can be a vector for the introduction of alien marine species, because they attach to the litter and they can travel with marine currents. So let's take a look to some pictures of the items taken out of the water after 6 months. So here we recognize the PVC, the acrylic, the plastic bottle, the glass bottle, the aluminum can, and the wood. Colonizers were mostly barnacles, and they showed a preference for materials. Actually, they preferred to colonize the glass bottle, which was the most colonized, and also the PVC item, rather than plastic or aluminum. And here we see the pictures taken to the same items after 1 year in the water. And it can be noticed that barnacles have been replaced by mussels growing on the barnacles. The items are almost not recognizable, and there were, well, they didn't observe a substrate preference. And here we have a picture taken to the glass bottle, to the bottle of glass after a different period of time. So from 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and ending with 1 year. So it was really impressive to see how the glass was completely colonized by organisms. Another topic that has created great concern is the presence of microplastic in the ocean, which are pieces of plastic smaller than 5 millimeters. Microplastic in the ocean are present as primary microplastic, such as the microbeads that are found in personal care products, or textile fibers that are released directly in the environment, but also there are secondary microplastic, which are those plastic pieces released by bigger plastic items through the weathering and the photodegradation. So with this activity, learners can investigate the presence of microplastics on virtuous discs. And it is important to avoid any contamination, to use aluminum discs as well as glass or metal supplies in the laboratory. On Canvas platform, you find the instruction and the lesson plan for this activity, but let me go through it really briefly. So you should select a sample of biomass up to 25% of the total mass disc, and you can scrape it off using a metal razor blade. Then you can perform a separation with a separating funnel. In this way, you will divide the liquid from the organic materials that collect here at the bottom of the separation funnel. And once you have collected the water, the next step is the vacuum filtration process. So you shall vacuum filtrate, placing a filter paper like this on the mouth of a Buchner funnel. And once the filtration process is over, you can remove the filter's paper and prepare it for observation with a microscope. And here we have some pictures taken while trying to detecting and observing the samples with the stereoscope. And here you can notice some pieces of microplastic. Like here we can see one, and here also. So once they are released in the ocean, the microplastic can easily enter the trophic chain, being swallowed by the organisms, and they can climb up the chain, ending in the fish that we are eating. That's why this is a topic of great concern, and we think that this experiment is a good way to discuss about it in the schools and educational center, also to raise awareness about the microplastic problem in our ocean. Virtuous also means sustainability. This is why we encourage to reuse virtuous discs and pipes once your experiment is over. There are two options, one using white vinegar and the other with diluted caustic soda. And on Canvas and also on Virtue's website, you find detailed information on the cleaning process to clean the discs and also the pipes. So once they are clean, they can be used for several seasons. So we encourage the educators and the teachers to reuse for several experiments the discs. Okay, so we are coming to the last part of the presentation. I would like to present you some ludic activities that can be done with youngsters to learn while having fun. On Virtue's website, you can find games instruction, and also you can download the cards and laminate them to play in the classroom. So here in the section for the teacher, you can go in the left menu on games, and here you can download all the cards and the instruction. The first game is the Virtuous Secession game. The aim of this card game is to show the normal chronological settlement of falling organisms on the discs. So while playing, they will simulate on a board the chronological settlement of organisms, starting from the pioneer species, such as bacteria and diatoms, ending with the predators, so the red cards. And it's interesting because we have also some special cards with some events. So I encourage you to go on Virtue's website to see how this game works. And this game can complement the activity Let's Investigate Secession. The second game is Domino, Virtuous Domino card game. While playing, youngster will familiarize with the larval stages of the most common animals they will find on the discs by matching the larvae with the adult form. For instance, we have here a card with a tunicate larvae, and we should add a card with the tunicate, with an adult tunicate. And you can go on matching the cards and creating a domino like that. The third game is Mother and Baby Memory, and is again addressing the topic of larvae and adult stages, but in this case in the form of a memory game. So players shall pair the larval with the adult stage by choosing cards on the board. Here we have an example. I was lucky, I'm joking. So for instance, I picked a starfish, and I should pick larvae of a starfish. And the game go on until all the cards are taken by the players. We said many times that Virtuous is also interdisciplinary because it embraces topics of biology, mathematics, physics, but also, why not, art. Here are some pictures of the drawing produced by students at Hebel School in Germany. In fact, they organized an art exhibition in the school corridors inspired by the observation of Virtuous discs. So, for instance, here we recognize Virtue Rack, and they use different art techniques. So this activity can well empower the student, and also as an idea to set free the creativity of our students. And as the last activity, I would like to present you the opportunity to engage the youngsters in scientific video making. On Canvas, you will find a short guide to filmmaking for upper secondary school. This short guide was edited by Dennis Augustins, a researcher from the University West in Sweden, which is a partner of Virtuous project. So media literacy is present almost in all the school curricula, and it is the ability to read and create your own media communication. So with Virtuous, youngster can also be engaged in practical science media literacy. So they can do media production, telling their experience monitoring the biodiversity. As, for instance, the video that you can watch on Canvas on the experiments with antifouling. So we know that children and teenagers are keen on technology, and they can easily use the skill to create their own scientific videos with cameras, mobile phones, or using simple editing software. And the contents of the video production could be general topics of ocean science, or, as I said it before, they could tell their experience with Virtuous project and maybe share their results with peers. In order to understand how to present science knowledge in a video production, I suggest you to watch the videos we posted on Canvas and to go through the booklet that you can download. Video making takes time to practice, we know that, but youngsters will have the opportunity to direct a short movie, and maybe they can have the opportunity to discover their passion for filmmaking, and they can also familiarize with tools and technology to communicate science in an effective way. Okay, well, I hand here my presentation about the hands-on activities that you can do in your school or educational center within the Virtuous project. As you may have noticed, there are a lot of possibilities with Virtuous project. So I encourage you to go on Canvas platform to download the Virtuous lesson plan, and also to navigate through Virtuous website to discover all the teaching resources. Also, on Canvas platform, you can find other ideas to get inspiration to create hands-on activities about the ocean. And we posted some useful links where you can find tools and methods to bring the ocean to your classroom. If you have any question, please post them in the forum of discussion of Module 4, and I will give you some communication, some important communication. So the course officially ends tomorrow, but we will give you extra times to submit the assignment of each learning module. So you will have until the 28th of May to do the assignment and submit them. After that, if you have completed the assignment, we will send you a certificate of participation to the course. And also, I would like to inform you that this massive open online course will be converted to a similar ECTS long distance course offered by the University of Gothenburg, probably starting from this fall. So we will advertise this learning opportunity on Virtuous website as soon as the course is made available. One last thing, on Canvas platform, if you scroll down after Module 4, you will see a satisfaction survey. And we encourage you to take a few minutes to fill it, because your feedback is really important for us to improve this course. Okay, so I can start my video so you can see me again for a second. I think I can say thank you from all the Virtuous team. It was a pleasure to have you all during these 4 weeks, and we hope you enjoyed the course and you enrich your knowledge. So thanks again from the whole Virtuous team. Stay safe and take care. It was a pleasure again to have you. Bye-bye.